5 empty chairs. That's what I saw when they called my name. A row of silence where my family should have been. No cheering, no cameras, no one waving from the crowd. Just 5 chairs waiting for people who never came. My name is Ava Morgan. I'm 23, and last week I graduated from the University of Washington, alone. Not because I wanted to, but because my parents and sister decided to take a last-minute family trip. They called it family time. I guess it was just without me. If you've ever stood in a room full of people and still felt completely unseen, this story might feel familiar. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been forgotten by someone you love? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, take a quiet moment to subscribe. Your small click helps stories like mine reach the people who need them most. That morning, I woke up early. Sunlight streamed through my window, soft and golden, like it knew how important the day was supposed to be. My graduation gown hung on the closet door, navy blue, pressed and ready, and beside it, a cream-colored invitation I had written by hand. Reserved seating for the family of Ava Morgan. I'd imagined my mom holding flowers, my dad taking pictures, my sister cheering from the front row. For once, I thought they'd be proud. The campus was alive that day, banners fluttering, cameras flashing, the air thick with perfume and nerves. Families filled every seat, hugging, laughing, celebrating. And me? I sat near the front, alone, pretending to look busy so no one would notice the 5 empty chairs next to me. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "Sweetheart, something urgent came up. We'll make it up to you later." Seconds later, a photo appeared on my sister's social media, my parents and her at the airport, smiling, luggage in hand, ready for a spa weekend in Palm Springs. That's when I realized they hadn't forgotten. They'd simply chosen something else. When my name was called, Ava Morgan, summa cum laude. I stood up, smiling for the camera like I was fine. I walked across that stage under bright lights and loud cheers that didn't belong to me, and in that moment, I finally understood. This wasn't the first time they'd left me behind. It was just the first time everyone could see it. That was the day something inside me began to change. The day I stopped waiting for applause and started learning to stand on my own. After that ceremony, I couldn't stop thinking about those empty chairs, because the truth is they weren't just empty that day, they'd been empty my whole life. When I was 10, I built a small water filtration system for the state science fair. It wasn't much. A few recycled bottles, some gravel, a bit of wire, but it worked. I remember standing on that stage, clutching my tiny blue ribbon, searching the crowd for familiar faces. I told myself they were just late, but as the minutes passed, I realized no one was coming. That night, I took the bus home alone, holding the trophy in my lap like a secret no one cared to hear. Later, I saw a photo online, my mom and dad beaming beside my sister, Sierra, wearing a glittering pageant crown. Her caption read, "Couldn't have done it without my family." And I thought, neither could I. I just didn't have one there. It was small things at first. Birthdays they forgot. Conversations where my voice barely reached their ears. At Christmas, Sierra's gifts sparkled in ribbons and gold paper, designer purses, perfume, concert tickets, while mine came in plain wrapping, notebooks, a pair of socks, a polite smile. "Practical, just like you," my dad would say, handing me the kind of gift you give a coworker, not a daughter. By 13, I learned to stop expecting excitement from them. I'd say, "I got an A," and Mom would murmur, "Good, honey," without looking up from her phone. But when Sierra posted a selfie, the world stopped. They'd crowd around, hearts in their eyes, talking about her lighting, her influence, her followers. My achievements were quiet. Hers were loud. And in that house, loud was what counted. When I broke my arm one summer at camp, I remember the counselor calling my mom, panicked. She showed up hours later, sighed and said, "You're stronger than this, Ava. Don't make a scene." But when Sierra scraped her knee the next week, my mother carried her to the ER like she'd been shot. She even bought her ice cream afterward. "My poor baby," she said, as if Sierra had survived a war. That was the day I realized pain didn't matter unless someone noticed it. So I started hiding mine. I became the dependable one, the quiet one, the girl who never needed anything. If I couldn't earn their love with noise, maybe I could with usefulness. I worked hard, saved money, helped with chores no one thanked me for. When the bills piled up, I was the one who volunteered to get a job at the cafe down the street. Mom said, "You're so responsible, Ava." But I could tell what she really meant was, "You're one less problem to worry about." Sierra, meanwhile, became the center of their world, the bright one, the beautiful one. Every dinner conversation circled back to her new sponsorships, her brand deals, her followers. They'd laugh about her glow, her potential, her future. And me? I just washed the dishes, listening, wondering if anyone would ever say my name with that same warmth. When I left for college, I thought things might change. I'd earned a scholarship, full ride, top of my class, and for a moment, I felt proud. But when I told my parents, Dad just smiled and said, "Well, at least we won't have to pay." That sentence stayed with me. It sounded like gratitude, but it wasn't. It was relief. I wasn't their pride. I was their savings account. At first, I worked 3 jobs to stay afloat. Cafe in the mornings, library in the evenings, internships on weekends. When things got hard, I imagined that day I'd walk across the stage and see their faces shining back at me. I thought, this will be it. This will finally make me enough. But standing on that stage years later, surrounded by strangers, I realized I'd built my whole life chasing something that was never real. Love isn't supposed to be earned, but in that family, it always came with conditions: beauty, attention, usefulness. And I was none of those things. I was the quiet daughter who showed up, worked hard and kept the peace. The one they remembered only when something broke, and someone had to fix it. I used to think silence was strength. Now I know it's what grows when love stops speaking your name. The day of my graduation was supposed to be proof that all those quiet years meant something. 4 years of late nights, empty birthdays, double shifts, and long commutes, all building toward one simple hope, that maybe finally they'd be proud of me. It wasn't even about the applause. It was about having them there. Proof that I existed in their story too. That morning, I woke before dawn. The world outside was soft and still, the kind of silence that feels like a blank page. I brewed coffee in the small apartment I shared with my roommate, Claire. She was the kind of friend who always noticed when I was holding my breath, the only one who remembered to ask if I'd eaten, if I'd slept. She left a note on the counter that day. "Today's the day, Ava. You earned every second of it. I'll be in the back row cheering louder than anyone." I smiled when I read it, but part of me still thought, no, my family will be there. They promised. I'd texted my mom the night before. Reminder, ceremony starts at 10. Front row seats are reserved. I can't wait to see you. She replied with a single heart emoji. I took that as a yes. By 9:30, the campus was alive with energy, bright gowns, cameras clicking, laughter echoing under the summer sun. Students hugged their parents, posed for pictures, cried happy tears. I stood near the entrance, gown pressed, cap in hand, scanning the crowd for my family. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Still no sign of them. "Your guests should be able to see you perfectly from here," a volunteer said kindly, leading me to my seat. I nodded, pretending everything was fine. My row was near the front. 5 seats marked, "Reserved for the family of Ava Morgan." They looked so hopeful, those little white cards. So sure that someone would come. The ceremony began. Names were called, cheers erupted, bouquets waved through the air. Every time a new graduate stepped up, the audience clapped like thunder. And every time, my eyes drifted toward those empty chairs, still untouched, still waiting. Then, just before my turn, My phone buzzed in my lap. A message from my mother. "Sweetheart, something urgent came up. We'll make it up to you later." My chest went cold. It wasn't the first time she'd said those words. She'd said them after the science fair, after my 16th birthday, after every small milestone they missed. But somehow, I still wasn't prepared to hear them today. Seconds later, a notification popped up, a photo on my sister's social media. Mom, Dad, and Sierra at the airport, luggage in hand, smiles bright and polished. The caption read, "Palm Springs Spa Weekend, family time before summer gets crazy." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air in that crowded hall felt thinner, like someone had pulled all the oxygen out. Palm Springs. While I was walking across a stage, they were walking toward a vacation. When my name echoed through the speakers, Ava Morgan, summa cum laude, I stood automatically. My body moved, but my heart didn't follow. Applause thundered around me, echoing from strangers, not family. I smiled for the camera like I was fine, like this was what I'd always wanted. But when I looked down from that stage, all I saw were those 5 empty chairs lined up like witnesses to a truth I'd tried to deny. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd chosen not to come. The ceremony ended. People hugged, shouted, took photos in the sunlight. Claire found me outside, bouquet in hand. She grinned. "You did it?" And I did. But the words didn't feel right in my mouth. When she asked, "Where's your family?" I just said, "Something came up." Her smile faded. "Of course it did," she said quietly, like she already knew. That night, I didn't go home. I sat on a park bench near campus, still wearing my gown, watching other graduates walk by with their families. Laughter floated through the air, carried by the smell of coffee and summer. I opened my phone again, looking at that same photo of them smiling in Palm Springs. The screen dimmed, but I didn't move. I just stared until my reflection blurred with theirs. When I finally walked back to my apartment, Claire had left a slice of cake on the table with a note. "For the girl who deserves to be celebrated. Whether anyone shows up or not," I cried quietly as I ate it, not because they weren't there, but because I finally understood they never would be. It wasn't that they didn't love me. They just loved a version of family that didn't include effort, or empathy, or showing up when it mattered. And for the first time, I realized something I had never let myself say out loud. I was not invisible. They had simply chosen not to look. That was the night I stopped asking, "Why didn't they come?" and started asking, "Why do I keep waiting?" The morning after graduation, I told myself to move on. They'd missed one ceremony. It hurt, but I'd survived worse. I made coffee, answered a few congratulatory messages from classmates, and tried to convince myself it didn't matter, but that illusion didn't last long. By noon, my phone lit up with 35 missed calls, all from Dad. No messages, no "we're proud of you," just the same text, over and over again, "Come home immediately." For a moment, I thought something terrible had happened, so I drove back to Bellevue, rehearsing apologies that weren't mine to say. The moment I stepped inside the house, I knew I shouldn't have come. The kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner, that same artificial calm my mother always created before bad news. Dad was at the table with his laptop open, spreadsheets glowing across the screen. Mom poured coffee without looking up. "And Sierra?" She was scrolling her phone, manicured nails tapping against the screen like she was timing my patience. "Sit," Dad said, like this was a business meeting. "We've got a situation." I didn't sit. "What kind of situation?" Mom finally looked up. "Your sister had a little trouble with her credit card this weekend. The bank froze her account, some mix-up with spending limits." Sierra rolled her eyes. "It wasn't my fault." They double-charged me. Dad turned the laptop toward me. A red banner flashed across the screen. "Account suspended. Since you're good with money, maybe you can help us resolve this." It took me a second to realize what he meant. "You called me the day after graduation. To pay off her debt?" He sighed, the kind of sigh that made me feel like I was the problem. "You've been saving." We'll reimburse you. I laughed quietly. Right. Like you reimbursed me for tuition? Or the scholarship refund you said you needed for the roof? Mom's voice sharpened. Don't start, Ava. You know your sister's under a lot of pressure. Pressure? I said. She was at a spa while I was walking across a stage alone. Sierra slammed her phone down. You're so dramatic. It's just money. And there it was, the final crack. Not only had they missed my moment, they wanted me to fund theirs. I took a deep breath. No, I'm not transferring a dime. She's 20. She can handle her own mess. Dad's eyes narrowed. Ava, don't be selfish. Selfish. That word again. The one they always used whenever I refused to be their safety net. I turned toward the door. You skipped my graduation, lied about an urgent trip, and now you're asking for money. You don't get to call me selfish. Mom's voice followed me, brittle and cold. If you leave now, don't come back asking for help. I smiled without turning around. I never have. I drove home with both hands gripping the steering wheel. No tears this time, just a cold, steady rage. It was the kind of anger that didn't burn. It froze everything it touched. That night, Claire came over with 2 slices of leftover cake. You okay? She asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't. They wanted money. That's all it ever is. She exhaled, shaking her head. Some people only notice your worth when it benefits them. Her words stayed with me. The next afternoon, my phone rang again. An unknown number. Hi, this is Allison from First Pacific Credit Union. We're calling to confirm a transfer of $5,240 from your account this morning. Do you authorize this transaction? My heart stopped. No, absolutely not. She hesitated. It was initiated online from an IP address in Bellevue. Does that location sound familiar? It did. Too familiar. My parents' house. They hadn't just asked for my money. They'd tried to take it. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the floor. The betrayal didn't feel like fire. It felt like silence, like the slow realization that they'd crossed a line I didn't even know existed. For years, I had trusted them with everything, even my online banking password from when I was 16. Dad once said, "Let me keep an eye on it. Make sure you're building good habits." I never changed it. Part of me still believed they'd respect that boundary. That part of me died that afternoon. I spent the next few hours changing every password, enabling 2-step verification, locking every account. It felt like changing the locks after a break-in. Not because I wasn't careful, but because I never thought the people with a key would use it against me. By evening, I sat in the dark, laptop closed, hands trembling. Claire texted, "Dinner?" I typed back, "Not hungry." But then she replied, "You need to eat." I'm outside. She showed up 10 minutes later with takeout and silence, the good kind. We sat on the couch, both quiet, letting the city hum outside. "They tried to steal from me," I said finally. She blinked slowly, eyes soft. "I know." And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel crazy for saying it out loud. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about the message. They weren't asking for my help anymore. They were claiming ownership of what I'd built. And that was something I could never let happen again. That night, I whispered a quiet promise to myself. If they could cross that line once, I would make sure there was never a second chance. A week passed after the bank call. For a while, the silence almost felt like peace, until Mom's message appeared one morning. "Dinner this Sunday. Everyone misses you. Let's talk." Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the old part that still craved approval, whispered, "Maybe they'll apologize." Claire warned me, "It sounds too neat, Ava." "Be careful," I smiled weakly. "I just want closure." When Sunday came, I drove to Bellevue again. The house looked perfect. Too perfect. Lights glowed from every window. The table was set with linen napkins and candles, and the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. but the warmth felt staged, like a movie set right before the scene breaks. "Sweetheart, you made it," Mom said, kissing my cheek. Her lipstick didn't touch my skin. Sierra stood near the table, wearing a silk blazer and the kind of smile that hides teeth. Dad motioned toward a chair. "Let's eat first, then we'll talk business." I froze. "Business?" Sierra slid a blush pink folder across the table. "You're going to love this," she said sweetly. "It's my new company, Serafina, a luxury wellness brand. Skincare, therapy, holistic everything." I glanced at the title page. Business proposal, family investment opportunity. There it was. Not dinner. A pitch. Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister's built a solid plan. We're just looking for some startup capital. You'd have equity." "Of course," Mom chimed in quickly. "It's an opportunity for the whole family, Ava." I turned a page. Projections, slogans, partnerships, all fluff. Then I saw my own name listed under potential investors. "You put my name on this?" "We knew you'd come around once you saw the vision," Mom said with that soft, sharp voice that always meant, "Don't argue." Sierra leaned forward. "We just need a small investment, 200,000. You've got savings, right?" I blinked. 200,000? Dad nodded. "You're good with money." "This would help us all." Something inside me snapped. Not from anger, but clarity. "You skipped my graduation, tried to steal from me, and now you're asking for $200,000? Mom's tone turned cold. "Ava, don't be cruel. Your sister's trying to build a future." "No," I said, standing slowly. "She's trying to build an illusion, and you're both buying in." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were printouts from banks and credit agencies, loan rejections, unpaid balances, emails from lenders who'd already said no. I dropped it on the table. The sound was louder than I expected. "You've already tried this idea with 3 other people. When they all said no, you came to me, the one person who's never told you no before." Sierra's voice cracked. "You're jealous." "Of what?" I asked. "A fantasy brand built on other people's money?" Dad's face turned red. "Watch your tone." "No," I said quietly. "Watch how you treat people. I'm not your bank. I'm not your backup plan. And I'm not your fool." No one spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock, steady, certain, like a countdown to the end of something old. I picked up my bag. I came here hoping for an apology. Instead, you gave me a sales pitch. Then I looked at Sierra, at her perfect hair, her rehearsed tears, her glossy folder. "I'm done funding your dreams. It's time you learned how to stand without leaning on me." When I left, no one followed. The house behind me looked beautiful and hollow. For the first time, I didn't feel small walking away. I felt clean, free, and painfully alive. That night, Claire texted, "How'd it go?" I sent back a photo, the empty street outside their house. It went exactly how it needed to. 3 months passed after that dinner. Silence replaced the noise of confrontation, and for the first time, that silence didn't scare me. I'd found peace in my small apartment downtown, a place that finally felt like mine. Every morning, sunlight streamed through the window and touched the diploma leaning against the wall, still unframed but no longer hidden. It wasn't proof of who I needed to be. It was proof of who I'd become without them. Work gave me purpose again. My boss, Karen, noticed what no one in my family ever did: effort, integrity, and quiet strength. She once told me, "You don't have to prove you belong here." "You already do." I didn't cry then, but that night I did. Not from sadness, but from relief. Then one evening, a message arrived from my mother. "Dinner this Sunday. Everyone misses you." I stared at it, then smiled, a soft, knowing smile. I didn't reply. Some invitations aren't meant to be accepted twice. Instead, I met Claire and a few close friends on the rooftop of my building. We ate pasta from mismatched bowls, candles flickering in wine bottles, laughter spilling into the city air. It was small, imperfect, and real. Everything love should be. At one point, Claire raised her glass. "To Ava," she said, who finally stopped waiting for the wrong people to clap. Everyone laughed, and my heart felt full in a way it never had before. I looked around the table. 5 seats, all filled. 5 empty chairs once broke me. 5 new ones healed me. If this story touched you, take a moment, hit like, subscribe, or share it with someone who needs to remember their own worth. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't forgiving those who left. It's learning to love yourself enough to stop chasing them. Some stories aren't about winning people back. They're about walking away with your head high, knowing you were whole all along.